have, through, political connections and, having some awareness of who to call. My mother-in-law is undocumented. My mother-in-law, had very limited language skills. And I could see how that impacted my ex-husband, his brothers, and how they had difficulty navigating. And also my own experience with the public schools. I mean, you mentioned it yourself. You have your own idea of what you went through. I was a kid that grew up in very difficult circumstances, and I ended up getting expelled from public school. I got my GED from the Jackson Man, Boston Public Schools, and I always assumed negative intent because the system did not work for me. And so now I take a look at the system with my 3 little boys, and I watch it start to fail them even in kindergarten. And there comes a time where me as a mother, I have to stand up and say, this is not acceptable for my children, and I'm not going to stand by and allow it to happen to any other child either. We have to come together because this is a situation of our own making and something that we can change if we work together. And it is hard because right now, parents haven't been given the seat at the table that they deserve. We've been pat on the head, we've been pushed to the side, we've been disrespected. And now we're growing in strength and numbers. And I think, this week in particular, we did something pretty amazing just yesterday at the State House where we showed them that we're serious about this and we care deeply about our children and we're not going to be ignored any longer.
Yes, and that comes to wrapping up all these thoughts that I have in my head because it's happened very rapid. The changes are happening fast in terms of we saw parents coming to our meetings, to our community meetings, and we started asking them what were their concerns, what were the issues they were having. And I was surprised to hear that the majority had the same issues.
Mm-hmm. Were you surprised though? I was not surprised.
Well, I was surprised to hear the fact that in 30 years since I went through the Boston public school system, things have not changed. I was surprised to see that there is so much negligence in the system. That's what I was surprised about.
Negligence, racism, the belief gap, thinking that our children, because they're Latino, do not have the capacity to do anything more than growth. They're not capable of being proficient in math, in reading. I mean, that's a critical problem. So I don't know, I'm not surprised because we haven't changed anything.
Right, and Massachusetts Parents United has a logo. You have a website. You were able to incorporate it into a nonprofit organization. Mm-hmm. That's a big accomplishment in like less than 2 years.
Yeah, we're now into our 3rd year. Can you imagine? We've been doing this is into our 3rd year now. We started, you and I met at Starbucks, right, and had a conversation. I met with other parents at libraries and coffee shops. I go to their houses. I went not only here in Boston, I went to almost every gateway city, and I talk to parents, I talk to my people. And there is a very sacred relationship when one mommy talks to another mommy, when one dad talks to another, because we speak a different language, and we have that solidarity that is unbreakable, because you and I both know what it's like to have to get up in the middle of the night for a crying baby and to still have to hold it together the next day. There's this kindred bond that is formed between parents, and we share information with each other. And we trust each other for advice. And we also share the same heartbreak and the same anxieties and the worries and wanting more for our kids. So what we were able to do with Massachusetts Parents United, which is a very simple thing, it runs just like a union. I'm a former union organizer. I saw it work there. It works with parents as well. When we come together, and there's no hierarchy, there's no somebody talking down and saying, well, I've looked at your community, parents, and this is what you're doing wrong. And frankly, this is what school systems like BPS do to us all the time. We don't think the way you parent is good enough. We don't think your problems are important. We want you to go to our parent university. We're going to teach you the parent skills that we want you to have because we don't care about your culture. We don't care about what's happening in your home or your neighborhood or what you're seeing. We want you to be the parent we want to be. So we did something different. And we came together as parents and we discussed what was important to us, and then we decided to fight.
But you know what? If we talk about the principles of the United States, it's so un-American to try to strip people from their beliefs, their rights, their ways of thinking. And I feel that you know, they've done that, or they're trying to do that to us for a number of years. But there's something going on nowadays that it's blowing my mind. For example, I do know that my director has the images, and I want you to talk to me about exactly what went on yesterday on the State House, and what was the reason behind that. I do know that Governor Baker released his
budget.
His budget, and there is over $2 billion.
Well, actually, we'll back you up. So, since last year, there has been a lot of discussion about how we need to invest more in education, which we all know, yes, we need to invest more in education. Massachusetts may be #1 in the nation for education, but not #1 for kids like ours. Unfortunately, for Black and Latino children, low-income kids, high-needs kids, we are not getting the job done. But you know, we have this nice rosy picture because in the aggregate, the big number, the white affluent kids do so well, it kind of comes out in the wash. We have a crisis when it comes to educating Black and brown children in Massachusetts. So we've been able to create enough urgency to say, yes, we need to invest more in education. So for the past year, there's been this discussion and this push. And of course, there's the Foundation Budget Review Commission recommendations that said, yes, you should spend more money. However, that's not all they said. They said there's a whole host of additional things that we need to do because it's about more than money. You can't just throw money at a problem and expect it to get better. That's like trickle-down economics, how Ronald Reagan used to talk about trickle-down economics. So give some more money to the top and hopefully it'll trickle down to the people who need it. It doesn't work in economics. It doesn't work in education funding either. Unfortunately, the conversation we've been having this year, because we did not get things done last year, we're in a new conversation. The conversation has been around the Promise Act, which says, we don't even know how much, it could be $900 million, it could be $2 billion, around a theory that if we just flood our districts in communities across the Commonwealth with money, hopefully people will make the right decisions and it will get to the classroom. Now, unfortunately, we know that institutional racism is a real thing. And unfortunately, our education system is mired in systemic institutional racism. Now, the idea that we can just throw money at districts and hope they're going to do the right thing on behalf of Black and brown children without any kind of restriction, without any kind of direction that this is how you're supposed to do the money, we are supposed to trust them for that? On the basis of what should we trust that they're going to do the right thing?
There's a history.
You and I have gone through that system and we know better.
Yeah, I've been to BPS and they tell us, the last thing I heard was last year that there were $3 million of mismanaged money, and we get to find out until they get audited, 2-3 years down the line. Like 2-3 years later, we find out that they mismanaged the money. Money that were supposed to be used for kids in the classroom was used for anything else but that.
And Rodolfo, it doesn't stop there. Okay, you and I have been working together about breakfast after the bell, right? So just a couple of weeks ago, I went in and spoke with the superintendent of the Boston Public Schools because, frankly, we were able to force the Department of Elementary and Secondary Education to force more than 100 Boston Public Schools to now implement that program. They have a woman, Laura Benavides, who is the Director of Nutrition for the Boston Public Schools, who was hired under Tommy Chang, who was able to implement this system in the largest public school district in America, LAUS State, the Los Angeles Unified School District. She hasn't been able to get it done in Boston because of politics and all of the turf wars and all of these excuses. Now, Boston Public Schools will tell you they've expanded sites around breakfast in the classroom. But the number of kids actually utilizing that breakfast every morning has declined. And we're expecting kids to perform. Now, I say all this because you and I know that if they don't effectively implement breakfast in the classroom, they leave almost $8 million in reimbursements and additional funding from the USDA on the table. So there's another $8 million. There's $3 million here. We know there's problems in the bowling building with excessive staffing and money that just gets clogged up in that building and doesn't hit kids in the classroom. So again, you are asking us under the Promise Act to trust that they're going to spend, because in the Promise Act, it specifically says to Boston, $100 to $150 million, that they're going to do the right thing?
Let's do something. I want to continue talking about the Promise Act, but we're going to go to a public announcement, and when we come back, we're going to talk in detail about the Promise Act and the things that were happening in the State House yesterday. Okay, this is Rodolfo, this is Concepto. We're talking about the Promise Act next, but we're talking about education, and I have Keri Rodrigues here in the studios today. She is not only a founder, but she's the mom-in-chief of the organization Massachusetts Parents United that has at least 5 chapters in the state of Massachusetts, including Springfield, Holyoke, Lawrence, Lowell with the Cambodian community, and the Boston metropolitan area that includes from East Boston to Brighton to Jamaica Plain, Roxbury, Dorchester.
Oh, we're about to expand an exciting campaign, so I want to talk about that too.
Great. So we're going to go to a public announcement. When we come back, we're going to be talking about the Promise Act in detail, so stay with us. This is Concepto. I'm Rodolfo, your host.
Es un corto trayecto de su colonia hasta su bosque local. Para encontrar un parque o zona verde cerca de usted, visite descubreelbosque.org.
Inundación. El próximo jueves. No tengo tiempo para esto. Yo ya tenía planes la próxima semana. Ay, me malogra todos mis planes, qué pesados que son. ¿Es en serio esto? ¿Han visto? No, pues no. O sea...
Los desastres no planifican. Sin embargo, usted sí. Comience por hablar con sus seres queridos para hacer un plan de emergencias. No espere. Prepárese.
Sí, tenía miedo. No sabía si iba a poder hacerlo.
Encuentra clases gratis para adultos cerca de ti en completatudiploma.org.
They'll test you. Try to break your will. But however loud the loudness gets, however many cheese puffs may fly, you're the driver, the one in control. Stand firm. Just wait. And move only when you hear the click that says they're buckled in for the drive. Never give up till they buckle up.
Amigos, this is Concepto. I'm your host, Rodolfo. I'm here back with Keri Rodrigues. Today, we're talking about what her passion is about education and the type of things that she's been able to do with Massachusetts Parents United. We were just finishing our conversation before this segment, and she was telling me about the different chapters that there are going on in the state of Massachusetts. I mentioned that it's a Springfield, Holyoke, Lowell with the Cambodian community, Boston that includes East Boston, Chelsea, Revere. I've been all over this.
And so many more now, right? We've been down to New Bedford. We've been to Haverhill. Like, it started with 5. And now we've kind of become the 911 for parents. So when parents are in trouble and they feel like they're not being heard, we hear from them directly. And we try to respond and make sure that we provide them with the resources, because it's very difficult. You have no idea, how to make yourself heard, because there are very powerful forces all around you in politics and, people with lots of money. And, as parents, you would think that we would have a voice and be considered in these conversations, but we don't. So we like to be the backbone. When parents need us, we come in, we help.
So tell me about the new project that you're talking about just now.
Yeah, so we're very concerned about equity in the city of Boston and the inequitable funding that we see within the district itself. I mean, the differences between what's spent at the Elliott versus what's spent at the King and the Trotter and so many other schools, I mean, it's palpable, how that is just so unjust and inequitable. So what we're hoping to do under the new federal law, ESSA, the Every Student Succeeds Act, we want to make sure that we understand on the building level how much money is being spent, so we can hold our district accountable in terms of making sure that's more equitable, because the kids that need the money the most need to be able to access those resources and make sure they're allocated. We've got to speak up for them, because what the problem is right now fundamentally is people think that equal equals equitable. There's a difference between equality and equity. Some of our kids, unfortunately, I mean, we know this, you know,